Hey there, are you sitting down? Good, because Wayfair's end-of-season sale is here, and you can shop it from your couch. It's Wayfair's Labor Day clearance, and it's on now. Right now, you can score up to 70% off everything home at Wayfair, like up to 50% off outdoor furniture and decor, and up to 70% off area rugs, plus amazing doorbuster deals, and 24-hour surprise flash deals on Wayfair home finds in every style. And get it all with fast shipping on everything, right to your door. From furniture to faucets, this is your last chance of the season to score huge deals at Wayfair. Don't let the final days of summer pass you by without shopping these end-of-season savings. So don't wait. Like summer, these savings won't last. Head to wayfair.com today to score up to 70% off everything home. Celebrate your holiday weekend with can't-miss savings before they run out. Shop Wayfair's Labor Day clearance now through September 2nd at wayfair.com.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
A warm and friendly hello! Welcome to lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the Easton Family Podcast. We've got yet another conference preview edition happening for you today as joining me in segment number 2 of HappeningHoops.com, that would be Ethan Hennessy, the master of taking a look at the Patriot League. We're going to be chatting about all 10 of these rosters. We really don't have a lot of coaching changes or anything like that, and with the Patriot League, with the high academic standards, we actually have consistency in this league. We have consistency in this conference. Not 100 billion transfers. Warms my soul. And you've got a lot of teams returning some talent. So we're going to be talking about that with Ethan in segment number 2. Here in the first segment, we're going to be taking a look at the trends, the styles of play, and just the nooks and crannies of the Patriot League. And then in the final segment, I'm going to get you guys my projector or finish for the Patriot League, one of my favorite conferences, by the way. I fell in love with college basketball back when Bucknell in 2005 knocked off Kansas in the NCAA tournament. Really got me into college basketball, so I always have a lot of affinity for this conference every single year. And if you ever do have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one or two ways to fire those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters CM, name does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. And then from there, you're able to fire in whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via that 5-star review. While I did not get in any Twitter/X questions today, everything is powered by EdgeBoost. EdgeBoost is making sure that bidders are able to have access to their funds whenever and wherever they want. With EdgeBoost, 100% of gambling transactions do get approved. And when you go to edgeboost.bet, put in that promo code of Greg, G-R-E-G. That's going to get you a dollar for dollar match on your first deposit up to $25. And how about if we get down to business and let's take a look at a Patriot League where we saw a lot of good three-point shooting last year. I recognize that this team was towards the bottom and the caboose of the Patriot League, but how about Holy Cross being 9th in the country in three-point shooting percentage at 38.6%? I'll dive into this in a minute, but you're going to notice that these teams are very deliberately selling out and playing super-duper slow to get a lot of good three-point looks, and that's a little bit of a hallmark of this conference. You also had Lehigh be a relatively good three-point shooting team last year. They were 51st in all of college basketball with regards to their three-point shooting percentage. Now, you had a little bit of a divide between the haves and the have-nots in terms of their three-point shooting, as you did have a few teams that were a bit rough from the outside. Like American was solid. They were the team that represented the Patriot League in the NCAA tournament last year, 102nd in the country in terms of their three-point shooting percentage. The bracket Boston Bucknell Bison were 95th in the country with their three-point shooting percentage. Boston U was a little bit below average at about 213th with their three-point shooting percentage, as a little bit of a fall off away from home, but a team like Lafayette was towards the bottom half. They were about 165th with their three-point shooting percentage. Loyola Maryland was about 221st, so it was a little bit of a ho-hum sort of season for them. And for Army, they lose a lot from last year. They were 312th in the country in terms of three-point shooting percentage. They were one of the just strange teams in this conference in which they were built a little bit more down low. You don't find that a lot in this conference, as in this conference, a hallmark of it is the fact that you just don't have a lot of rebounding, and Colgate was just uncharacteristically bad last season. They had won the regular season conference crown in 5 out of the last 7 years, which prior to last year, the only conference crown that they didn't win was that COVID year of 2020, because Navy, I think, went 11-1. They went 10-1 in conference. So, it was a divide between them playing one less game than Navy, so that was interesting. And Colgate, by the way, still, even in their down season, 70th in the country with regards to their three-point shooting percentage, but getting into the rebounding and the lack thereof that you find with these teams in terms of being able to hit the offensive glass, just not a lot of second chances to be had. Who I mentioned before, an American that made the NCAA tournament last year, 324th in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of their missed shots. That resulted in an offensive rebound. Bucknell, 280th in terms of percentage of their missed shots. That resulted in an offensive rebound. Loyola Maryland was actually well above average at 208th with this regard, as Lehigh was 353rd in this category. Lafayette was 320th in this category. Colgate, again, down season for them last year, 326th in this category. So, the list goes on and on. Navy, who I actually think is going to be rock solid this year, they were one of your top teams in terms of being able to get second chances, 122nd in all of college basketball in terms of percentage of their missed shots. That did result in an offensive rebound. And you did notice that in the Patriot League last year, a lot of these teams had a bit of a rough go of it on defense. Bucknell was one of your better defensive teams. Even American, who made the NCAA tournament, they were 196th in the country in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis. The Bracket Bison, who won the regular season crown out there in the Patriot League, 123rd. Colgate was 245th. The L's were not necessarily amazing. Lehigh, 210th. Lafayette was 153rd in terms of points allowed on a per possession basis, and Loyola Maryland, 229th. So not like atrociously bad defenses, other than Holy Cross, but 308th in the country in terms of their points allowed on a per possession basis, and also well outside the top 300 in terms of their offensive rebound percentage as well. So very interesting there. And I was mentioning it a little bit before as well. Lots of teams that are very deliberate with their style. They're selling out to be able to get good looks from three-point range. They're willing to turn the ball over quite a bit. A lot of these teams outside the top 225 in terms of ball security, because they are really looking to make sure that they get that proper shot. American, 358th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. I believe that each of the last 3 years they've been in the bottom 10 in terms of total possessions per game. Navy is a team that is traditionally pretty low and slow, 268th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Lehigh has always been one of your more up-tempo teams, and in comparison to the rest of the Patriot League, they actually were last year, but they were 248th in terms of total possessions per game. Lafayette was 291st in terms of total possessions per game. Loyola Maryland, 273rd in the country. You had Holy Cross, 304th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. Bucknell under John Griffin is looking to play a little bit more fast, 83rd in the country. That was by far your more up-tempo team in this Patriot League. For Colgate, because they didn't have proper personnel last year, they had to really slow things down as well, 269th in the country in terms of total possessions per game. So lots of teams that they like to really slow things down, and that makes things very interesting with regards to totals. So you've got a lot of teams that they have quite a few turnovers, but they shoot it well from three. They play very, very stinking slow with regards to their style as well. And in the Patriot League, what you found is that a whole bunch of teams went over. You only had two teams play more unders than overs. Boston U, who, by the way, another team, I was outside the top 300 in terms of total possessions per game, 16 unders, 15 overs. So it's not like they were some sort of demonstrative under team. And then Lehigh, 16 unders to 12 overs. You had Loyola Maryland post up 20 overs to 10 unders. Lafayette had 19 overs, 12 unders, and 2 pushes. Army, 18 overs, 13 unders. Bucknell, 19 overs, 14 unders. Holy Cross, 16 overs, 12 unders, 2 pushes. Colgate, 18 overs, 15 unders. Same goes for Navy, and American, 17 overs to 16 unders. So very overwhelming conference. And if you take a look at what we saw in terms of conference play, things were harebrained and crazy. Lafayette, 12 unders to 7 overs in Patriot League play. American, 12 unders to 9 overs. And then you had a bunch of teams that they had either 12 or 13 overs to 7 unders. Had that for Colgate, Loyola Maryland, and Lafayette. Holy Cross, 11 overs, 7 unders, and a push. Bucknell, 12 overs, 8 unders. Boston U, 11 overs, 8 unders. So it's not like you had teams that were like belting out an 80% clip to the over, but it was just a lot of consistent and constant overs. And you had 3 teams outside the conference post up more than 2/3 of their games to the over. In non-conference play, Army went 8 overs, 4 unders. Same goes for American. Loyola Maryland, 7 overs to 3 unders. You did have Boston U go 8 unders to 4 overs. That's because of their slow style play and the fact that they couldn't knock down a lot of threes. And then Colgate, a little bit slower than expected, 5 overs to 8 unders as well. And then if you're looking at the cover rate out there in the Patriot League last season, you had a lot of teams that just weren't really making a lot of money. There weren't really truly bad teams. Your worst team in terms of cover rate was Colgate. Just expected a little bit more out of them last year. It was a down year after they lost so many guys from that previous team that had made the NCAA tournament. 14-19 against the spread. Lehigh was 12-16 against the spread. Boston U and Loyola Maryland both either 14-16 or 14-16-1 against the spread. Holy Cross was 15-15. Navy was 17-16. Army was 16-15. American 17-15-1. Lafayette 19-14 against the spread. And then Bucknell was your top cover A team. They were very surprising under John Griffin, 20-12-1 against the spread as they were able to win that Patriot League regular season title. And with the Patriot League, you don't have a lot of demonstrative travel out there. Like, a lot of these teams are based out there in Pennsylvania, in Washington, D.C., places like that, this great state of Maryland, Massachusetts. So you're not going to be having a lot of inclement travel. So the home court advantage is actually not that great out there in the Patriot League. Like, your best cover A team at home last season was Boston U, 9-6 against the spread when they were at home. Army and American, they were both either 8-6 or 8-6-1 against the spread at home. Bucknell and Lafayette were a break-even 8-8. Lehigh 5-6 against the spread at home. Colgate 6-8. You had Loyola Maryland and Navy both go 5-8 against the spread at home, and then Holy Cross was 4-7 against the spread at home. Meanwhile, teams on the road, they were able to go a little bit more gangbusters. Bucknell 12-3-1 against the spread away from home. Now Boston U was rough away from home, 4-10-1 against the spread away from home. Army was 6-9 against the spread on the road, and then Lehigh and Colgate both 7-10 against the spread on the road. But Navy was able to rip off a 12-6 on the road. Lafayette 11-6 against the spread away from home. Holy Cross 10-7 against the spread away from home. Loyola Maryland 9-8 against the spread away from home, and then American, they went 7-8 against the spread when they were away from home as well. And this is a conference that really doesn't favor favorites. The only team that covered more than 50% of their games as a favorite last year was Bucknell at 11-9 against the spread. All these other teams were awful. Holy Cross 1-3 against the spread as a favorite. Lehigh 3-8 against the spread as a favorite. Navy 4-8 against the spread as a favorite. Colgate 8-14 against the spread as a favorite. Loyola Maryland 5-8 as a favorite. American 7-9-1 against the spread as a favorite, and then three break-even teams: Boston U, Lafayette, and Army. They all were 500 against the spread as a favorite. Meanwhile, the Dogs, they were just cashing like crazy. The only team that covered fewer than 52.5% of their games against the spread as an underdog: Boston U 6-8-1 against the spread as a dog. Bucknell 9-3-1 against the spread as an underdog. Lafayette 12-7 against the spread as an underdog. American 10-6 against the spread as an underdog. Navy 13-8 against the spread as an underdog. Even Colgate 6-5 against the spread as a dog. Holy Cross 14-12 against the spread as a dog. Lehigh, Loyola Maryland 9-8 against the spread as a dog, and Army 10-9 against the spread as an underdog. So the Dogs were barking out there in the Patriot League. It's a very tightly knit conference. You've got a lot of guys returning. The margins become thinner, and we are going to be talking about that and so much more on the flip side as Ethan Hennessy. He does great work over at Happening Hoops. He does an incredible job of covering the Patriot League. We're going to be talking about all these rosters and all these teams with him next, right here on Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Beast and Family Podcast, the Patriot League Conference Preview Edition. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Peterson, now part of the Beast and Family Podcast. Great to get this man aboard. Whenever the great Sam Fetterman gives a recommendation, you always listen, and this man does a tremendous job taking a look at mid-major college basketball out there in the Northeast landscape. That'd be Ethan Hennessy. He runs a great website called HappeningHoops.com. He is one of the Patriot League Masters, and this is one of my personal favorite conferences as well, so it is great to be able to get him aboard. I know that he doesn't do as much on Twitter/X. You want to go to HappeningHoops.com. That is the main thing that he does, and then if you're searching on Twitter/X at Happening Hoops on that front as well. And Ethan, it's great to get you aboard. Thank you.
Yeah, Greg, thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to talking about some Patriot League hoops here.
Absolutely. I am as well. And first things first, how about if we take a look at this team? And it's a team that really made me fall in love with the Patriot League with the way that they knocked off Kansas so many years ago in Bucknell. They were able to go 13-5 in the conference last year, but I think you know as well as I do, they're going to be missing a lot of those backcourt pieces from a season ago. They're going to be relying upon someone like an Archuleta Spendone to be able to help things out with about 8.5 points per contest. They have a few guys like a Brandon McCreesh back. He was able to shoot it well from three-point range. How do you take a look at a Bucknell team that had a really good big man in Noah Williamson, and now they have to look to replace what I thought was perhaps the biggest unicorn in the Patriot League last season?
Yeah, absolutely. You're right about that in terms of Noah Williamson going to Alabama. He was He was really their best player, but they also lost a lot of other talent. I talked with Coach John Griffin, and he likes the pieces that they're bringing in. They've got a transfer from Toledo who didn't play as many minutes for the Rockets, but they like the role that he's going to play. Pat Curran, who's a freshman from Glen Country School, is going to be a good piece for them in the backcourt there. And they really believe that they got a steal in recruiting with kind of new center who has experience in the German national team, the U19 circuit there, and was really a player that probably was above Patriot League caliber there. They're a team that, has championship experience. They want to share the regular season title. We're the number 1 seed. I look for them to take a little bit of a step back this year, but they'll still probably be in contention in that middle of the pack range.
And you mentioned the gentleman coming on over from Germany. There was a guy by the name of Chris McNaughton back in the day, and that panned out quite well for Bucknell. And then this team very much forms their identity down low. That'd be Boston U, one of the best rebound rate teams really in all of college basketball last year. They're going to be bringing back 2 of their top 3 scorers. Kyron Alexander, who put in their 13 points per contest. Michael Aaron McNair was able to shoot about 41% from 3. They've got a lot of returning size with Nick Nobile, Ben Defty. These guys are going to be coming back, and Defty is a true 7-footer for this team as well. I know that Otto Landrum has been in and out of the lineup, but it looks like he might be able to return as well. And I'm very intrigued by a Boston U team that it always feels like on the offensive side things that limits them, especially that free throw shooting. But you know what you're going to get from this team in terms of hitting the glass.
Yes, Greg, you're so right. They are a team that really hangs their hat on defense. And one thing that I always know about Joe Jones teams is that, you're never going to have an off day when you're playing them. They're always showing up with their lunch pail and their hard hat. And this is a team, too, that really, contrary to kind of how things are in the college basketball landscape, they've stuck together for a number of years. They're a really old team, a fair amount of juniors, seniors, grad students. I like really their size in particular. Malcolm Chimeze down low. He's just a tone setter on the glass. They also have Otto Landrum, who's another big body presence there. Ben Roy is a capable guard for them. And then, Ethan Okawusu, he's a really good scorer for them. Matai Baptiste. They're a team that just has a ton of experience, and I would pick them towards the top of the league.
Yep, I do think that with Boston U, just having that rebounding is not going to be a issue for you at all. You know what you're going to get there. Need to improve that free throw shooting just a little bit. That's a lot of teams out here in the Patriot League, but certainly a team that has been rock solid defensively over the last few years, as Ethan Hennessy does great work over at Happening Hoops, joining me for the Patriot League Conference Preview Edition right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And American is going to be looking to make it back-to-back NCAA tournament appearances. They are going to be missing a few key guys. Matt Rogers is no longer in the fold, but they bring back Greg Jones, really nice three-point shooter who averaged about 10 points per contest. Matt Mayock, Jeff Spruce, these are 2 guys I like in the backcourt as well. They've got a lot of ancillary pieces. They do lose some of these guys like Elijah Stevens. He was one of the main showrunners for this team, but I do know with American, they're going to play really, really slow. You can bank on that. They have been towards the bottom in terms of total possessions per game the last few years, and I really think that American, with the way that they've been able to stay true to their style, the way that they've been able to develop within, even though they might not quite make it back to the NCAA tournament this year, I don't think that there's going to be too much of a fall off, even with missing some of the starters from a season ago.
Yeah, American, I felt really last year was their window to go win the league, and they obviously did and made it to the NCAA tournament. But that was because they had so much age on their roster. I mean, they've lost a ton. Matt Rogers, one of the best players in the league, a really versatile center. Colin Smalls, Lincoln Ball, they're all gone. As you mentioned, they do have Greg Jones and Matt Mayock. I like them. Matt Mayock's a good shooter, and Greg Jones is a good two-way wing for them. But it's going to be a lot of new pieces for the Eagles down there at Bender Arena this year. One thing I do like is that the schedule in the non-conference kind of favors them. They have a lot of home games. They're hosting an MTE of their own and have some non-D1s coming in, and the travel's reasonable, just a few kind of more regional games up and down I-95. So I think the Eagles will have a chance to kind of get some reps in early, but it's going to be a lot of new pieces, and I don't really expect them to be in that top tier for contention again this year in the league.
This is a team that we always expect to be in the top tier, though. That'd be Colgate, because last year them not making the NCAA tournament was a surprise, and you know this as well as I do. Typically, Colgate has that do-it-all sort of player, and they didn't quite have that last year. And that goes all the way back to Jordan Burns, Nelly Cummings, guys like that. In my opinion, they might try to look to Jalen Cox to be that this year. He was able to be a little bit of a do-it-all stat sheet sufferer, 12 points, 4.5 boards, 4 assists, stealing half per contest last season. Bringing back 6'6" Parker Jones is nice. And they bring in a transfer, which is very rare out there in the Patriot League. Ben Tweedy spent a little bit of time at UW Green Bay. He should be able to help out on the facilitation front. How do you take a look at a Colgate team that they are going to be missing a little bit down low from a season ago, but much of that backcourt that was very young, and they did lose a lot of pieces from the team that made the NCAA tournament 2 years ago. They are going to be back.
Yeah, I mean, basketball fans all across the country will recognize Colgate's name from the dominance they've had in the league for the past half decade. But this isn't necessarily the same Colgate team that we've seen. A lot of those pieces, those dynamic players that you talked about, have frankly transferred out or graduated. And so one thing, though, that I can say about Colgate is they recruit really well to their system. They kind of recruit a little bit like in Ivy League, where they're just national in part because of the academic brand of the school. They're able to go into these areas and kind of pick kids out that are maybe a little bit overlooked, but fit their system really well. And they're a really good offensive team, prolific three-point shooting team. I think Jalen Cox will be the primary player for the Raiders this year, but the loss of the center, Jeff Woodward, who had been in the program for a number of years, that's going to be a big hole to fill for Colgate.
Yep, that is going to be a big hole because he was very solid down low. And with Colgate, like we were just talking about, they always look to that one guy that sort of does a little bit of everything at Cox. Not quite the same three-point shooter that we've seen from the likes of Nelly Cummings and company. So that might be a bit of an issue. This team is going to have some issues, though. And let's call it what it is. Army, they brought back a lot of experience last year. You'll love to see it. Jalen Rucker coming back. That was great. Now you have no more Jalen Rucker. You have no more A.J. Allen Patch. You have no more Ryan Scovins. This is going to be very much a gutted team. They pretty much have to replace all their top 4 scorers from a team that was very top heavy last year. I'm not sure how you take a look at this Army team, but man, looks like this is going to be a little bit of a rebuild for them this season.
It really is, Greg. I don't think Army's going to do too well. They're a program that just historically it's tough to win at West Point. They're one of the 3 original Division I schools never to have made the NCAA tournament. Last year they had a little bit of a breakout year. They finished tied for 3rd in the Patriot League, but because of the way the tiebreakers broke, they ended up getting the 6th seed. They lost Jalen Rucker, who was their point guard for a number of years. And he was a guy who could really give you 20 points, a scoring spark plug. And then Josh Scovins, in my opinion, every year there's kind of about one wing guy in the Patriot League that you look at and you're like, okay, he has 8'10" athleticism. And Josh Scovins could really drive the ball well. He was 6'7", could, caused a lot of defensive problems on the defensive end for teams when he was guarding, could shoot the 3 well. They're without him as well. So it's really going to be Ryan Curry, their point guard there, who's scrappy. He can certainly give you some points, some assists, some steals. But I kind of look at the rest of the roster and I'm like, I'm not really sure who is going to be there for Army. Their center, Jordan, he's probably going to have a little bit of a bigger role this year. But one thing I will say about Army, they're actually going to get some good teams in the schedule. They got George Washington coming up to West Point, and they're hosting Duke. Even if the team isn't going to be that good, hopefully the excitement up there in West Point will be palpable, at least in the non-conference.
Yep, and that those boys are going to be fighting hard. Might be a case where they're fighting hard and the breakout comes once they get a little bit more experience as well, as this is going to be a bit of a new look Army team, as Ethan Hennessy does great work over at happeninghoops.com, joining me right here on Coast to Coast Hoops. And this is a team that I think might be able to bust out a little bit. I'm not saying that they're going to win the conference or anything like that, but might go from more of the bottom to more of a mid-tier team. That'd be Holy Cross, because we know that Dave Paulson has had success in this league before. The NCAA tournaments that he was able to lead Bucknell to, spent a little bit of time at the Atlantic 10 level before heading back to Holy Cross, and this team bombed it from 3. 9th in the country in three-point shooting percentage. Defense needs to pick it up, but 6'6" Joe Nugent is a nice three-point shooter. Tyler Boston quite literally made 9 of his 11 threes last year. I don't know if he's going to quite shoot 81% from 3, but that was a great sample size right there. DeAndre Williams is a guy that's able to dole it out as well. Like, I look at this Holy Cross team, and certainly they're going to need to pick it up a little bit on the glass, but I like the backcourt play, and they undeniably have some really good three-point shooting.
Holy Cross is an interesting team because they brought Dave Paulson in a few years ago to take over as the head coach, and he had obviously had a lot of success in the league, formerly at Bucknell, and then did, decent at George Mason. But the Dave Paulson era so far at Holy Cross has yet to take off. And it's a little interesting because they're one of the, in my opinion, better resourced programs in the league. I look at Holy Cross and they're able to recruit really well. They bring in guys who are really talented for the Patriot League, but they just struggle to retain them. And it seems like that happens year after year. of, oftentimes, maybe two of their top three players transfer out. We saw that this year with Max Green, who was a large reason why Holy Cross was so good at shooting the three last year. He now transfers to Northwestern. Caleb Kenny is gone as well. But yeah, as you said, I do like Boston on that team. I do like Nugent. I'm maybe not quite as high on the Crusaders as you, but we'll see. Maybe they're able to put some of the newer pieces together.
Yep, and obviously the big key is they need to play a lick of defense because the three-point shooting there is there. But man, that defense, it left a whole heck of a lot of something to be desired, to say the least. That'll be something that they need to work on. And this is a bunch that I think is very interesting for the upcoming season in Lafayette because they do have to replace one of the better mid-major shot blockers that you're going to find in all of college basketball, in Justin Vanderbond. 7-footers don't grow on trees out there in the Patriot League, and he was rock solid. But they do bring back Caleb Williams. He was able to give the team 11 points, one of the main distributors with about 2.5 assists per game. Mark Butler is a guy that's been able to contribute for the team quite a bit as well. Andrew Phillips was able to shoot it from three. The loss of Alex Shulkin, I do think, is rough, but this Lafayette team, they don't necessarily have the greatest metrics. It's not necessarily a thing of beauty, but for lack of a better term, they're the team in the Patriot League that I always feel like just finds a way to get the job done.
They do, and they're a team that, just a couple of years ago was in the championship game fighting Colgate for a bid to the NCAA tournament. I think the Alex Chaikin loss, who he transferred to UC San Diego, is going to be a really big one for them. I was at the quarterfinal game last year when Lafayette was playing at American, and he just went off for the Leopards and really single-handedly kept them in that game that they ended up losing. But he's such a good scorer that's going to be a big loss for them. As you mentioned, Devin Hines and Justin Vanderbond. Justin Vanderbond, the best shot blocker in the Patriot League. He's gone from last year. So this is kind of a similar theme that you're hearing with a lot of these Patriot League teams, is just a lot of departures, a lot of question marks. But I like Mark Butler. Ryan Pettit is also going to be good. I think for them, it's kind of how do you fill the front court? They're typically a little bit of a smaller team. We'll see with Lafayette this year.
Yep, absolutely. They're an interesting team, in my opinion. And this one is a fascinating bunch as well, because for Loyola Maryland, they lose the Elich brothers, which means that they're going to be a little bit soft down low, but they bring back a lot of their backcourt pieces, and they bring back three of their top four scorers. I always get this last name incorrect, but Jacob Thadusu, he's going to be able to give you about 13 points per contest. Braden Speed, great name, by the way, is back along Jordan Steinke. These guys are very rock solid, and Tyson Commander has not really taken off the way that I thought he was going to, but he's a solid piece in the Loyola Maryland backcourt as well. I've got my question marks down low with Loyola Maryland, but I think that they might be one of the better teams in terms of the guard play in this conference.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you there, Greg. It's really key for Loyola that they were actually, unlike a lot of the teams, able to keep their backcourt together. Jordan Stemke is a really capable shooter, and he can drive, and he can even dunk on you, too, as a guard. Jacob Theodoso really found his confidence, I thought, at the tail end of last season, particularly shooting from deep. And then Braden Speed. The three of them started playing really well together, and I'm excited to see what they're going to do for this year. You're right, the Illich twins, the loss of them was big, with Milos going to Cal, Velko going to Sam Houston State. That's the one position for Loyola that I think, could cause a little bit of concern of, okay, how do we fill the five and the loss there? Because their backup last year, Gob Cody, really didn't get a whole lot of minutes. Now, Loyola brought in a fair amount of transfers. They'll kind of plug and play, see who's going to fit that role a little bit better. Sam Springer is a transfer from Air Force. He's got kind of that academy toughness. I like a lot of the other transfers they brought in. A guard from New Zealand, Carter Bird McLean, who had been at Georgetown Prep. And then you mentioned Tyson Commander. He'll probably take a step forward this year in terms of confidence. He's a player that, can fit in his role, but also if, some of your main guys are having a bad shooting night, he can go and get you 15 points. Loyola is not a team that has really had a whole lot of success in the Patriot League. They joined in 2013-14, and only once have they finished above 7th place, and that was the year in which they finished 6th. So this, I think, could shape up to potentially be their best finish in league this year. Now, I still don't think it's going to necessarily be top tier, but they could be competing for, the 5 seed at the end of the year.
Yep, a lot of people forget that they and Boston U joined about a decade or so ago, and it's been a little bit touch and go for them, but this is a team that is a staple out there in the Patriot League. They produce one of the most famous players from the Patriot League. That'd be Lehigh, obviously CJ McCollum way back in the day, and Lehigh was a solid three-point shooting team last year. Top 55 team in terms of three-point shooting percentage. Just so unfortunate that they dealt with all the injuries injuries that they did last season, but Nasir Whitlock got to see a little bit more run as a result. He was averaging 13.5 points per game in the final 17 games when the team was a little bit gutted. Hank Alvey is a 6'9" big man. That's going to be big. Joshua Ingram is going to be back as well. Edouard Benoit, hopefully I got that one correct. He's been able to shoot it well from three at 6'8" as well. And what I think is a little bit of a rough go of it for Lehigh from last year with all the injuries might actually pay dividends this year with a lot of those guys getting the experience last year to be able to lead into what I hope is a relatively solid season here for the Mountain Hawks.
Yeah, Greg, you make a really good point of the injuries. Obviously, were not good for Lehigh last year. They finished 6-12 in league and ended up in 9th place. But the one bright side is a lot of those role players and those younger guys did get to take on bigger roles. And so as a result, got more experience. I'm maybe not quite as high on the Mountain Hawks. I think Nasir Whitlock is going to be a good, capable guard for them. Josh Ingram as well. One bright spot is I like Bube Moma. I've kind of seen his progression throughout the years with the Mountain Hawks, and he's just a really physical player, really good rebounder. I love kind of the development that the coaching staff has had with him throughout the years. You know, Lehigh, a lot of question marks. Could be kind of middle of the pack. That could be kind of lower in the basement. We'll see. I think that, you know, it'll just depend kind of how much those young guys and those role players, how much experience they got from last year.
Yep, I agree with you. If those guys could take a stride forward, it's going to be big. If they don't quite take that stride forward, then it could be a little bit rough for them. And this is a team that I'm very fired up to talk about because in this day and age of NIL, in this day and age where we had over 2,500 players enter into the transfer portal, it's refreshing to see a roster like this. And I'm talking about Navy, who returns more minutes and more production than any other team in all of college basketball. Over 80% of their minutes are back from a season ago. Every one of their guys that started at least 20 games last year are back. Don Draper, I think, is one of the most undervalued big men in mid-major college basketball. Austin Benjini was putting in their 19 points per game. Jinwoo Kim is a 40% three-point shooter. Navy's a team that does a nice job of hitting the glass. You know that with a military academy that they're going to be disciplined. I think that Navy has a chance to be able to bust out here and really make some noise in the Patriot League this year.
I very much agree with you, Greg. Austin Benini is really the straw that stirs the drink here for Navy. A high volume shot taker, but he does score a lot. He is really good, probably the best in the league at drawing contact. When he goes up for a shot, he'll, if a defender is anywhere in the vicinity, try to throw his body into them to get a call, and he's oftentimes very successful with it. Navy keeps a lot of their talent together. As you said, you know, they return the most minutes in the country. I like Junwoo Kim's three-point shooting. Aiden Kehoe is a player that I want to highlight, their center. He's just a mountain of a man. You know, his screens are really, really tough to get through. He rebounds really well. Also, Draper is a player who originally was recruited for football at the academy, transitioned to basketball. He's a really good wing for them, another solid rebounder. Navy is getting a lot of buzz in the preseason as potentially the pick to win the league. I don't disagree with it. I think it's interesting, though, because they're actually the only team in the league that has a new coach. John Perry will be the new head coach for the midshipmen. Ed DeChellis, longtime coach there in Annapolis, steps down. Also, Emmett Davis, his associate coach, departed as well. But just because they keep so much together, I kind of look at this Navy team in some ways similar to American last year, where like they've got all the guys, and maybe this is the year, first year potentially since David Robinson, that they could make the NCAA tournament.
Yep, and that would be so nice to see, as I just love the fact that they bring back so many guys you just don't see in this day and age, and I do think that that chemistry is going to be able to win out for them. And what wins out on this podcast is having great guests to be able to help me out, and you, Ethan, did an absolutely amazing job taking a look at the Patriot League. I know you're a wealth of knowledge when it comes to taking a look at this great game of college basketball. You're covering so many teams out there in the northeast part of the country, so let the good people at home know what's all on tap for you and how people are able to follow along on social media and other platforms.
It's happeninghoops.com. There's also a YouTube channel out there, Happening Hoops on YouTube, particularly kind of with the northeast, but you know, also covered throughout the country. Went to school in the Midwest at Valparaiso, so definitely a mid-major focus though with Happening Hoops, and can't wait for the season to start in the winter. Everybody be sure to listen to Coast Hoops too with Greg. He's got a great show, and I love what you're putting out.
I appreciate it, Ethan, and from one Midwest guy to another. I went to UW-Oshkosh, D3 University, so obviously I have a little bit of love there. And Ethan, he does an absolutely incredible job looking at this great game of college basketball. Did a nice job being able to break down all 10 of these teams in the Patriot League. So a big thanks to Ethan for joining me on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Coming next, it is that time of the podcast to give you my projector or finish for the Patriot League. And we're back here in lovely Las Vegas for Coast to Coast Hoops with myself, Greg Hoops Peterson, now part of the VSiN Family Podcast. Big thanks to Ethan Hennessy. He does such great work over at Happening Hoops. Taking a look at this great game that we all know, love of college basketball. He is a Patriot League master. You saw that on display in the last segment, the great amount of knowledge that he's got on all 10 of these teams out there in the Patriot League. So a big thanks to Ethan for joining me in the last segment. Now it is that time of the podcast to give you my projector or finish for the Patriot League. Now, because I am doing a conference preview today, that means that any news and notes I miss in college basketball on Tuesday, those are going to be polished up on the podcast tomorrow, so have no fear there. I want to give as much sparkle and shine as humanly possible to these conference previews, and always make sure that they are done right. And these are evergreen podcasts, so whether you're listening to this in late August, September, October, you're able to rewind and you're able to get good information. And, well, this might not be good. Dead last in my projector finish, I'm going with Army. Army is like the only team that doesn't return at least 40% of their points from a season ago. Like, everyone is gone from last season. Jalen Rucker was rock solid with 18 points per game. He's gone. Ryan Curry is gone. AJ Allenpatch, he is gone. And they're going to be looking to some of these guys, like a Jordan Everson, who gave you 4.5 points per game to really step up. I have no idea who's going to be running the point for this team, as pretty much everyone that's returning are a bunch of like 6'4" random guys, other than Everson, who's right around about 6'8". If you're Army, you just simply can't go into the transfer portal and pick out a new team or anything like that. The team was very good at being able to take care of the ball, by the way. 23rd in the country in terms of turnovers on a per possession basis. And Kevin McCarthy was shooting 37% from three. Looks like he should be back. He and Jason Holloway combined for 5 points per game off the bench, but that's all you got for Army. In a conference where darn near everyone is able to have some stability and are able to bring back a lot of minutes, Army is a lone team that does not. I have to, as a result, put them at number 10 in terms of my projector or finish. And number 9, I go with Loyola Maryland. They return a lot of their backcourt, as they do return 3 of their top 4 scorers from a season ago. Jacob Thedusu was able to give you 13 points, 4 boards, 2.5 assists, 1.5 steals per contest. Braden Speed, he was able to give you 8 points, 2.5 assists per game, and Jordan Steinke is able to give you about 12 points per contest, but they just don't have anything down low with the Elich brothers being out of the fold, and that's the big thing for this team. I recognize that this is not a conference where you're going to be getting a lot of offensive rebounds or anything like that, but you need to be able to get a little bit of rebounding, and that's a big question mark that you've got for Loyola Maryland. Who's going to be able to step up, be able to grab a few boards for this team? That's really where this team is going wrong, because it's not like they're an amazing three-point shooting team. They shot as collective about 32.5% from three-point range. You don't have anyone that's returning that really shot above 33% from three. Like Tyson Commander, part-time starter, he was able to shoot about 33% from the outside. So you don't have a lot of rebounding. You don't have a lot of three-point shooting. You're going to have to rely upon someone like a Sam Springer, saying 6'7", to maybe give you some minutes. Maybe you're going to be getting something out of Everett Barnes as a 6'9" freshman, but there's just not a lot of size on this roster. I think that they're going to suffer down low. I mean, having good consistency at the guard play is nice, but at the same time, I do have my question marks with Loyola Maryland, because those guards really don't bomb it from three. So as a result, I do have to put Loyola Maryland at number 9 in terms of my projector or finish. At number 8, this one pains me because I love Bucknell, but I had to put them here because they lose so many of those key pieces from last year's team. Like, Bucknell was actually one of your best defensive teams in the Patriot League last year. They struggled quite a bit on offense, but they were able to do a rock solid job being able to play some defense, and they are playing now at the fastest tempo in the Patriot League, with John Griffin coming over after he spent so much time at this fine program. But I know Williamson is a true 7-footer that was giving you 17.5 points, 7.5 boards, and was able to shoot over 31.5% from three. Having to replace him, having to replace Josh Bosco, having to replace Ian Mota, your top 3 scorers, that's an issue. Archley Spendone was able to give you about 8.5 points, 4.5 boards. He'll be rock solid. And Roya Bajaki, hopefully I said that correct, he's able to shoot about 31.5% from three. And Brandon McCreesh, I think that he can expand upon the 41.5% three-point shooting a season ago, but They're asking for a lot of guys to be able to step up. Quinn Berger is a guy that transferred on over from St. Joseph a few seasons ago. Just has been able to do a big giant nothing burger for this team. Gerger Bisic, he's 6'10". He should be able to give this team a little bit of size down low, but he's no Noah Williamson, that's for sure, and I do think that this is going to be a little bit of a rough year. You're going to need someone like a senior Josh Fulton, who has not seen a lot of minutes, to be able to step up, and I just don't know if Bucknell's going to be able to get that in a conference where I think that the margins are going to be incredibly thin. So with Bucknell, I did have to put them at number 8 in terms of my projector finish. At number 7, I'm going to be going with Lafayette. For Lafayette, they are going to be returning 3 out of their top 5 scorers from a season ago, including Caleb Williams, 11 points, 2.5 assists per contest. Mark Butler is also a relatively solid player, 3 assists, 7 points per game. There's nothing that really wows you about this team. Ryan Petit, he's able to give you about 4 points per contest. He's a relatively good guy from a perspective of being able to generate turnovers, 1.5 steals per game. And Andrew Phillips last season was able to give the team nearly 5 boards, shot 43% from 3-point range. But for this team, one thing that they did better than pretty much everyone else in the conference was block shots. That's because you had a true 7-footer, Justin Vanderbond, in there. Now you don't have Justin Vanderbond anymore, and that's going to be a little bit of an issue for a team that was 7-11 to start with last season. I do have my big-time question marks with this regard. You do lose Alex Shulkin, who really came on strong as a freshman, and that guy was shooting 47.9% from 3-point range. He took the most threes of anyone on the team. Having to replace that is going to be big. Having to replace the 2.9 blocks per contest out of Justin Vanderbond is going to be big as well. You're going to need someone like a Joshua White to be able to step up as a 6'7", little bit of a combo player that was limited to 9 games last season, so they're going to need a clean bill of health from him, and you just don't have the size down low that you had a season ago. As a matter of fact, they don't have a single guy with Division I experience that stands taller than 6'7" on this roster, so do think that as a result, Lafayette is going to be suffering a little bit. I do have them in my projector finish at number 7. Now, at number 6, defense is going to need to improve for this team, but I've got Holy Cross here. Holy Cross was 9th in the country in terms of their 3-point shooting percentage last season. Recognize that it didn't necessarily result in a whole heck of a lot of wins, but Dave Paulson is a guy that's won in this conference. He led Bucknell to quite a few NCAA tournaments back in the day. Guy knows what the heck he's doing. He was coaching in the Atlantic 10 ranks for quite a while. You do lose back screen from a season ago. He was able to give the team 15 points per contest, but you've got Joe Nugent back. He's a 6'6" combo player that's able to give you 12.5 points, 5 boards per contest. He was bombing it at 43% 3-point shooting. In a very small sample size of 10 games, Tyler Boston shot 81.8% from 3. I don't think he's going to shoot 81.8% from 3, but he looked relatively solid. He was giving out 4 assists. He was giving the team 9 points per contest. Clean bill of health. That's big. Andre 3000 Williams is able to give you 8.5 points. He was able to draw out 3.5 assists per game. That is going to take the pressure off of Boston when he returns. So that's another nice weapon for this team. You've got a few guys that leave the program. No more Khalil Singleton for the team, so that's going to be hurting them a little bit. But Gabe Warren, he was able to give you about 5.5 points as a part-time starter. Aiden Richard was limited to 23 games. He shot 44% from 3-point range. They need to find a way to be able to get to the free throw line. They were dead last in the country in terms of free throws attempted on a per-play and a per-possession basis, but I think that things are starting to come together for Holy Cross. They've got some lethality from 3-point range, and I think that that's going to get them to the middle of the conference. So I've got Holy Cross at number 6 in terms of my projector finish. At number 5, I'm going to be going with Lehigh. Lehigh was towards the bottom of the conference last year, just snake-bitten by a whole bunch of injuries in general. They do have to move on from a few of those guys, but Nasir Whitlock take advantage of those injuries. Overall last season was averaging 10.5 points per contest, but 13.5 points on 40.9% 3-point shooting in the final 17 games of the season last year. Hank Alvey is going to be able to give you some rebounding. That's something that the team so desperately needed after they lost Dominic Parolin to Boise State after he decided to transfer on over there. And then you've got a guy in Joshua Ingram who I like. He's able to give you about 4 boards per contest. He's able to shoot about 36% from 3-point range. Bube Mamoa was able to give you about 7 points, 3.5 rebounds per game during the 2023-24 season. Was limited to just 6 games last season. Getting him back is big. And Edouard Benoit was able to shoot about 42% from 3-point range as a 6'8", little bit of a combo player. This team needs to do a better job on the glass. 353rd in the country in terms of offensive rebound percentage, with rebounding 18.7% of their missed shots, but I think that Alvey is going to be able to work on that. I think that Whitlock is going to be given the keys to the car, and I think that he's going to do a solid job of not driving this thing into the ground. I think that Lehigh and their great tradition of having good guard play is going to continue, and they're going to be towards the middle of the conference. I've got Lehigh at number 5 in terms of my projector finish. At number 4, I go with Boston U, and Boston U, You know that this team is going to be one of the best teams on the glass. Here's the issue that you got for Boston U. In these tight nip and tuck games, and in the Patriot League, you're going to have a lot of nip and tuck games. This team, year in and year out, is one of the most atrocious teams at the free throw line. Like, my goodness gracious. Year in and year out, this team is outside the top 330 in terms of free throw shooting percentage, and that's a big reason why I had to put Bucknell so low. Bucknell last year was 339th in the country in terms of their free throw shooting percentage, so that's a little bit of an issue, but you've got Michael McNair back. He was able to give the team last year 10 points per contest, shot 40.8% from three. Nick Noble was able to give you about 5 boards per contest at 6'8". He only chipped in there 4.5 points per game. He has some work to do with regards to his offensive game, but you've got a 7-footer in Ben Defty who's able to give you about 5 points. He's able to give you a little bit of rebounding, a little bit of shot blocking as well. As Mir Abdullah, he's able to give you about 7 points, shot in the mid-30s from three-point range. So you've got some good outside shooting back. They need to improve upon shooting 66.9% at the free throw line. You've had a little bit of mixing and matching with this Boston U team, but they do bring back largely a lot of their pieces from a season ago. And again, this is always typically one of the better defensive teams in the conference. You've got Ben Roy, who I think is going to do a solid job at the point guard spot. And Baptiste, he's back after he had a very limited role last year. It was limited to just 10 games, getting a clean bill of health for him. Along with Otto Landrum, who he's been sort of in and out. He's another guy that's dealt with some injuries. I do think that Boston U going to be rock solid down low. Again, the free throw shooting and the overall offense still a question mark for me. That's why I can't put them any higher than number 4 in terms of my projector finish. And number 3, I'm going to be going with American. Now, American is going to be losing quite a few guys. They're towards the bottom half of the conference in terms of returning minutes, but I do believe in the guys that are going to be returning for American. I'm a big believer in Mr. Greg Jones. 10 points, 4 boards per contest. He's able to do a nice job shooting 44% from 3-point. Jeff Spruce has been a little bit in and out, was limited to 20 games last season, but shot about 36% from 3-point range, has shown some nice promise throughout his career over there at American. And for American, even though you are going to be losing that top guy from a season ago, Matt Rogers, we all remember the injury and how brutal that was. Matt Mayock, who's saying 6'7", I think that he's going to do a nice job of being able to give this team some nice versatility. Shot 35% from 3, 7.5 points per game. Needs to give you a little bit more on the glass, and losing that main point guard Elijah Stevens, that is going to be hurting this team, but I think that Spruce can become a little bit more of a facilitator. And then you've got some guys like an Eric Michaels, Julian Atrube, who are guys with a little bit of size. They're going to be able to give you a bit of versatility. I think that they're going to be able to do a solid job down low. And Wyatt Nasadis, hopefully I said that correct, I think that he's going to be able to give you a little bit of upside. Last season came in off the bench, had a little bit of a limited role, but I think that he's ready to bust out as well. And I'm just a big believer in general in the coaching of Dwayne Simpkins. He's done a really good job of being able to build up this Patriot League team in general. In his 2 years, he's been able to do a little bit less with more, it feels like, and I think that American, once again, going to be surprising in this conference. I've got them at number 3 in my projector finish. At number 2, I'm going to be going with Colgate. Typically, they are picked at number 1, and for Colgate, they just lost so much from that team that made the 2024 NCAA tournament. That this past year, it was a little bit rough for them. They are going to be losing their top scorer, Jeff Woodard, but they return a lot of their other guys. Brady Cummins, he's back. He was able to give you about 8 points per contest, shot in the mid-30s from 3-point range. And then Jalen Cox is a do-it-all guy that is back. He needs to improve upon shooting 29.4% from 3, because Colgate's identity is always 3-point shooting, and they were 70th in the country in terms of 3-point shooting last season. Kyle Carlissimo only averaged about 4.5 points on 37% 3-point shooting. I think he's going to take a nice stride forward this season, but for Jalen Cox, even though he gave you 12 points, steal and a half, 4 assists, 4 rebounds per game, that lack of 3-point shooting is rough, and we've noticed it with Colgate. When these teams have been able to make the NCAA tournament, you've had that one do-it-all guy for them. Even when you take a look at someone like a Braden Smith a few seasons ago, who he decided to transfer on over to Gonzaga, he was ahead of the stake. Obviously, Nelly Cummings a few years ago, he was the head of the stake. The guy that really started off was Jordan Burns, and I just don't know if Jalen Cox can necessarily be that guy that does quite enough as that do-it-all guy to be able to uplift this team and send them to a conference title. So I do have this Colgate team at number 2 in my projector finish, and at number 1, we've got Navy. Navy leads the country in returning minutes and returning points from a season ago. They're bringing back 85% of their minutes from a season ago. In this day and age, that's a unicorn. Like, you love all these guys that are coming back. Austin Bengini, 18.5 points, shot in the mid-30s from 3-point range, 4.3 assists per contest. You've got Jordan Pennick back. He was able to give you 10.5 points, mid-30s 3-point shooter. Jungwoo Kim was able to shoot 40% from 3-point range. This team, when they're really rocking and rolling, they're able to give you some turnovers. Don Draper's a guy that's 6'8". He does a little bit of everything. 8.4 points, 8.2 rebounds, steal and a half per contest. He's one of the best, shall we say, do-it-all players they're going to find in this conference. All 5 of their top 5 scorers are back from a season ago, and every guy that started at least 20 games for them last season, all 5 of them are back. You just don't find that in this day and age in college basketball. That's got me fired up on this Navy team. Like, this is a Navy team that, yeah, they didn't necessarily have the world's greatest results last year. They have to be better than outside the top 300 in terms of their 2-point shooting percentage, but this is a team that's got some relatively good 3-point shooters. They've got some camaraderie. They were one of the best rebound rate teams in this conference last year, and I think that they take that stride forward and they get back to the NCAA tournament for the first time in eons. Like, I think the last time that they made the NCAA tournament, it wasn't quite the David Robinson era, but it's been something like 28 or so years. I think that this is the year that Navy does it. They've got the most returning minutes of any team in all of college basketball. I've got Navy at number 1 in terms of my projector finish, and that'll wrap things up for the Patriot League Conference Preview Edition right here on Coast to Coast Hoops, now part of the VSiN family of podcasts. If you do like hearing from this fine podcast, Coast to Coast Hoops, you're able to subscribe wherever you hear your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Google Play, Spotify, Stitcher, and TuneIn. If you have a question, comment, segment idea, what have you for this podcast, you have one of 2 ways we offer those in. First one is my Twitter/X timeline at gunit_81. Keep in mind, letters EM. Naming does not matter, so as per usual, please do send these into the timeline. And the other way is find an Apple Podcast review. If you rate this podcast 5 stars, it is very much appreciated. From there, you're able to fire on whatever you'd like to hear on this podcast via the 5-star review. Big thanks to Ethan Hennessy, does great work over at Happening Hoops. He joined me in the second segment, did a great job breaking down this fine conference, and I'm with you guys every single day on this podcast, regular season and off season. We've got plenty more conference previews to do, and I'll be back with you once again tomorrow. Thank you.